Nature of Sesame. Okay. So let's continue where we left off. We're talking about some of the anatomical features that you need to know when you're trying to identify plants. And this will also help you with the exam that's coming up on Friday. And of course, the fruit develops from the mature ovary of the flower, right? There are many different types of fruits. Some of them are dry when they're ripe. Some of them are fleshy when they're ripe. In the case of the dry fruits, some of them split open when they're ripe, like a legume. And some of them don't split open when they're ripe, like acorn. The ones that split open are called dehiscent fruits. And the ones that don't split open are called indehiscent fruits. There are many different types of dehiscent fruits. This is an example of an indehiscent fruit. This is the fruit of a grass. In this case, it's corn. This corn grain is called a caryopsis, and it's a dry fruit. There's one seed inside, and the fruit. Thank you. Cheese? Okay, thanks. In the case of caryopsis, the fruit wall is attached to the seed all the way around. Hello, come in. This is an example of a fleshy fruit, this peach. And the walls of the fruit are the exocarp, the mesocarp, and the endocarp. The endocarp is the inner layer of the fruit wall. And in the case of peaches and other so-called stone fruits, the inner fruit wall is real hard and stony. And there would be one seed inside of that. And those are called drupes. The stone fruits are called drupes. This would be a legume. And the acorn is a type of nut. Okay, so how would you answer this? An acorn is indehiscent. Yes, very good. These are various types of fleshy fruits. An apple is, yes, sir.
It's kind of like a related / unrelated question, but why do squirrels like acorns so much? So if they're into this, like they can't open it. It's not fleshy. It's not fruity. It's like, why do they like it so much?
Well, acorns are very nutritious. They're full of starch and lipids and proteins. And when the squirrels bury the acorns, it rains, it leaches all the tannins out of the acorns. So when they dig them up, they're not as bitter as if they didn't plant them. And the ones that they don't dig up turn into oak trees. So they're replanting the forest.
Cool.
Also, squirrels are rodents, and they have incisors that grow all the time. They're like chisels. They can chew through the hardest material imaginable. They can chew through the holes of black walnuts, which are like rocks. And they have to chew. If they don't chew, their incisors keep growing and it kills them. So, many reasons. Eating acorns is simple for squirrels. That's like you eating a tomato. Eating a black walnut is more of a challenge, but they do it. Okay, so an apple is an example of a type of fruit called a pome. In the case of a pome, the receptacle of the flower becomes the fleshy part of the fruit that you actually eat. The core of the apple is the actual ovary of the fruit. Here's a drupe. Peach is a good example. Stony endocarp. In the case of berries, they're fleshy all the way through. Like a tomato is an example of a berry. And then an orange is an example of a type of fruit called a hesperidium. In the case of a hesperidium, it has this leathery skin, and there are like oil glands in the skin. Did you ever take an orange peel and squeeze it, and you can smell that burst of fragrance? It's from those oil glands in the skin. And then the hesperidium has all of these juice vesicles, which are actually little hairs that are full of juice. These juice-filled hairs form sacs. So those juice-filled hairs are basically one cell each, and they're filled with the juice. Hesperidium has a thick, leathery skin. It's essentially a berry that has a leathery exocarp. Okay, a berry is a fleshy fruit produced from a single ovary. It's fleshy all the way through. So there are many examples of berries. Grapes are berries. Amur honeysuckle produces berries. Tomatoes are berries. Persimmons are berries. Even bananas are considered to be berries, a type of berry. Pawpaws are berries. An avocado is considered a one-seeded berry. Can you name some examples of drupes other than the peach?
Hackberry.
Hackberry, okay. Yes?
Cherry.
Cherries.
Mangoes. Not technically some fruit.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay then, it's a drupe. All right. Any others? What about, yes?
Plums.
Plums. And let's see, almonds, olives. Those are all examples of stone fruits.
Dates. Right, because they have a single seed in them.
Dates.
Yeah. Like sun-dried dates.
I think they are actually stone fruit, yeah.
I think you're right.
30 days.
I think you're right. We'll have to investigate that one to be sure, but I think you're right. Dates are monocots, palm trees are monocots. All these other examples are dicots, but that shouldn't matter. The fruit is, I think you're right, I think the fruit is a drupe. Okay. Dates are really good. They're incredibly sweet. Okay, so a drupe is a fruit in which an outer fleshy part surrounds a shell, and that is the stony endocarp. And then inside of that, there's a seed. And these are developing from a single carpel, and in some cases, like in an aggregate fruit, such as a raspberry, those little fleshy things that make up the raspberry, those are like little tiny drupes. They're called drupelets. And each one of those would have a stony endocarp with a seed inside. Almonds are closely related to peaches and is an example of a drupe. An almond basically looks like a peach pit, and if you crack that open, that's where you get your almonds from the almond, not the peach. So this is the stony endocarp. This is an olive. That's another example of a drupe. Okay, what's this?
Hesperidium.
Yes, Hesperidium, lemon. Here we have a pome. So apples, pears are examples of pomes. The actual fruit is the core, but the receptacle of the flower enlarges, and that's the part that we're interested in eating. So what is this little stalk? Okay, that little stalk, the flower was attached to the tip of that, right? And if you look at the apple down here, you can see the remains of the sepals and other flower parts attached right there to the receptacle. Okay, this is a strawberry flower. And a strawberry fruit is an example of an aggregate fruit, and it's also an accessory fruit. It's an aggregate fruit because, okay, this is one flower, right here is one flower, but there are many individual carpels. So each one of these is an ovary from a separate carpel. And then this is the receptacle. And it's called an aggregate because the fruit is made up of many individual carpels from the same flower. You know, like a raspberry, strawberry. But in the case of the strawberry, most of the fleshy part of the fruit that you eat is actually from the receptacle that enlarges. And then each one of these becomes an achene, which is a type of fruit in itself. An achene is an indehiscent dried fruit. It has one seed inside. And the seed is only attached at one spot, you know, like a sunflower seed is an achene. And each one of these is an achene. So an aggregate fruit develops from a single flower, many separate carpels. And a strawberry is also an accessory fruit because much of what you're actually eating is actually from the receptacle, not from the ovaries. So each one of these is an achene. And you have this fleshy receptacle. And this is all from one flower. So there's the calyx of the flower right there. Do you guys have favorite fruits? What's your favorite?
Dates, actually.
You like dates?
Yeah.
Dates are unreal. They're like, who invented this? It's like eating candy. Of course, persimmons are pretty sweet too if you get a good ripe persimmon. I don't like a date.
I put them in my oatmeal every morning. Yeah.
Are they a good source of fiber?
Yeah, it's really nutritious.
All right.
Highly recommend.
I'll have to get some. What's your favorite?
I have a few favorites. I actually like raspberries. They're probably one of the bigger favorites of mine.
Raspberries, like black raspberries,
Black raspberries, even blackberries too.
blackberries. Okay. What about you?
I was gonna say raspberries.
Raspberries. Anybody else have a favorite fruit? Do I have a favorite fruit? Let me think for a second. I like a good ripe peach.
Peaches are good.
There's a high quality peach. I like those. Watermelon is good. Okay, this is your favorite fruit. And this is an aggregate fruit. Okay, so this is one flower. Each one of these little segments is from a separate carpel. And each one of those becomes a druplet, which is like a little tiny drupe. Many one-seeded druplets produced by a single flower. Sometimes if you eat like wild blackberries, they're kind of almost crunchy from all the seeds in there. So these are little drupelets. So blackberry is an aggregate fruit. One flower, many carpels. You can see the little style sticking off of that ovary or something. Okay, in the case of multiple fruits, you've got many individual flowers sort of coming together to form the multiple fruit. So a mulberry is an example of a multiple fruit. pineapple, it's a multiple fruit. So in the case of a mulberry, you've got all these individual female flowers. And each one of them develops into a druplet, but they came from individual flowers, as opposed to an aggregate fruit where there was one flower with many carpels. Okay, so this is mulberry. These are female flowers. And each one of those will develop into a druplet. So this is a multiple fruit. Each seed-bearing druplet came from the ovary of one pistillate flower. Same with the pineapple. The Osage orange, not Chlora palmifera, is in the mulberry family. And that's an example of a multiple fruit. So these are actually the styles coming off of the individual female flowers. And then inside of each one of these little ovaries, there will be a seed. Ever heard of breadfruit?
I'm just gonna ask you a question.
Breadfruit is in the same. What? What's your question?
Where's the, ask you about what is the.
That's the Osage orange.
That's good.
They're also called horse apples because horses will eat them.
There's a whole bunch of people that are.
Where'd you see them at?
Wilson.
You were in Ralston Woods? Yeah, good. Were you working with the Winter Creek? Okay. So anyway, that's a multiple fruit. Breadfruits look like big Osage orange fruits, and breadfruits are actually edible. It's more of a tropical thing. You really can't eat Osage orange. They think that mastodons ate those. And the wild horses that used to live here 20,000 years ago, they ate them. But the horses that they brought back to North America from Europe, you know, when the Spanish came over here, 1500s, they will eat hedge apples as well. Corn is a multiple fruit. So an ear of corn is a multiple fruit. Each one of those is from a separate female flower. And the corn silks are the styles and the stigmas that are attached to those little pistillate flowers that are attached to the cob. Yes, sir.
I forget what pomegranate looks like, but would that be multiple fruit? Because it's a little, you know, I'm talking about the little,
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I believe a pomegranate is actually considered to be a berry.
gotcha.
But each seed has like a fleshy stuff around it. The same is true for the passion fruit. I mean, it's a berry, but each seed has fleshy stuff around it. I'll bring some of those in before we have a frost. They're in my backyard. Okay, so an ear of corn is a multiple fruit, develops from many pistils and many flowers. Each kernel of corn is a caryopsis, which is a type of fruit, also called a grain. Okay. So this is the seed of a grass. And of course, these are monocots, so there's a lot of endosperm. That endosperm is, remember, it's triploid tissue, but it's just loaded with starch and other nutrients meant to feed the embryo and then the germinating seedling. This would be, if this were a grain of wheat, the embryo would be called the wheat germ. And then this seed coat and all this other stuff would be called the bran, the wheat bran. What kind of cereal do you eat?
I mean, it's oatmeal.
You eat oatmeal with figs on it? I mean, with dates on it?
Yes.
Do you cut them up?
Yeah, I mean, you have to, because to get the thing, the stony part
Oh,
out.
you gotta get that out of it, okay. All right, that sounds good, I want to try it. So the cucumber family includes things like cucumbers and melons and pumpkins and squash, zucchinis, all those are in the cucumber family. And that type of fruit is called a pepo. And the exocarp of a pepo is a thick rind, while the mesocarp and endocarp are both fleshy. So it's sort of like a berry with a thick rind. Okay, so this would be a male flower. This is a female flower. And it's an inferior ovary. The fruit is a pepo. It's produced from an inferior ovary with parietal placentation. And we'll be seeing a lot of these in the next few weeks. Okay, there are many different types of dry fruits. And as I mentioned, some of them are dehiscent, which means that they split open to release the seeds. And some of them are indehiscent. They don't split open. In the case of maples and elms and ash and the tree of heaven, the fruits are winged fruits. They're called samaras. A samara is a winged akene. This is an akene. So this would be like what you would find in a sunflower. Okay, so this is the ovary wall, and the seed is only attached at one location inside of that dried indehiscent fruit. You put a wing on that, and you've got a samara. The legume splits open along two seams. A follicle splits open along one seam. And capsules split open along more than two seams. So dehiscent splits open. Indehiscent does not split open. So this is a follicle from the common milkweed plant. So when this fruit is mature, it dries, and then it splits open along one seam to release the seeds. And in this case, the seeds have these little hairs on them, and they can fly for long distances away from the mother plant. So the common milkweed, we saw this over at Burnett Woods by the Nature Center, remember? Asclepias syriaca. There are many species of milkweed. This is Liquidambar styraciflua, the sweet gum. These are going to turn beautiful colors this fall. And in the case of sweet gum, the tree is monoecious. Okay, what does that mean? Yes,
There's uniquely male and female flowers on one plant.
correct. Monoecious means in one house. So it has separate male and female flowers on the same plant, like corn. So these are this is the male flower, it's the female flower. So here hanging down is the female, up here is the male. So these are producing pollen, so they're wind pollinated. So this is actually a multiple fruit. And each one of these is a capsule. It splits open to release the seeds. And the seeds actually have little wings on them. They get dispersed by the wind. Okay. So Claire's not here, so you guys have to take up the slack for her today. Groups. Peach, olive, cherry are groups. Legume is a dried, dehiscent fruit, splits open along two seams. And legumes form from a single carpel. Now, if you like to eat green beans, you're eating the immature legumes. They're still green, right? But if you let those mature and dry and split open, then you can get the seeds out and you have dried beans. Capsules are dry, dehiscent fruits. And they release their seeds through multiple seams. Okay, this is an achene. This is from a sunflower. So it's a dry, indehiscent fruit. There's a single locule, it's one compartment, and there's one seed, and the seed is attached to the ovary wall at only a single point, as opposed to a caryopsis, which is attached all the way around. So it's easy to get a sunflower seed out of the dried fruit. Just break it open. Dandelions have achenes that have these hairs on there that help them to be dispersed by the wind. Okay, samaras are winged achenes. So this is from the tree of heaven, Ailanthus altissima. This is from a maple. So this is an achene. It's only the fruit wall is attached to the seed at just one point. That's where the funiculus is. And in the case of a caryopsis, like from a grass, the seed is attached to the fruit wall all the way around. Okay, so corn is a monoecious species. These are the male flowers in the tassel. And these are the female flowers in the ears. Now, in some grasses, the flowers contain the male and the female parts in the same flower. But in the case of corn, it's a monoecious species. This is okra. Okra is from the mallow family, the Malvaceae. And if you eat okra, you eat them when they're still green, when the fruits are still green. But if you let them dry out, they split open along several seams. They're capsules to release the seeds. Acorns are indehiscent. And oaks are incredibly important plants in the deciduous forest for many reasons. For one thing, many of the native moth species lay their eggs on oak leaves. And the little moth caterpillars feed on the oak leaves. Okay, so then of course the birds can feed on the caterpillars. And of course the acorns provide food for deer and turkeys and squirrels, chipmunks, and many other types of animals that like to eat the acorns. Okay, so the fruit of sunflower is hemocene. Now, in some of the members of the bean family, the legume actually separates in between the seeds. And that type of fruit is called a lomant. So if you go hiking out in the fields and woods, you might come home and have your pants covered with these little triangular things that have a seed inside. And those actually came from lomants. There are several species of thick trefoil. It's called Desmodium is the genus. And they have lomants that like to break off and stick to your pants when you're out hiking in the fall. Does anybody ever experienced this before, or am I the only person? Okay. Okay, so many types of fleshy fruits, many types of dried fruits. And after this test on Friday, we're going to start talking about the different families of flowering plants. And when we do that, you'll be hearing more about different types of fruits. They're associated with the different families. A capsule is a dried fruit that is dehiscent. Dehiscent means it splits open. Okay, the rest of these you can just look at on your own. Okay, glaucous means covered with a grayish, bluish, or whitish waxy coating or bloom that is easily rubbed off. This is a leaf from a plant called bloodroot, which is the native wildflower. And it is glaucous. It has this waxy coating on it, which you can easily rub off. So, a lot of terminology. Do you have any questions about the life cycle of a moss or a fern or a flowering plant? Okay. Make sure you know those before you take the test on Friday. Different types of inflorescences. Okay, well, would you like to have some herbarium paper?
Yeah.
Okay, yes?
Are we meeting on Friday?
I think I'm just gonna skip class on Friday. Let you guys take your your midterm exam. Concentrate on that. And make sure you study ahead of time, okay? You're not gonna have time to look up all the answers, because once you start it, the clock starts ticking. It has 105 questions, you'll have 105 minutes to finish it. He speaks the truth. You're gonna need that time. And of course, this is the honor system, right? I said you can use your book, use your books, but you take it on your own, okay? Really? Okay, all right. If I can get this open, I'll give you some herbarium paper, but I'm having difficulty.
You're doing it all?
Yes.